Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is indulge. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear the verb indulge used is to mean to allow oneself to enjoy the pleasure of something. Now, with this verb and that meaning, some people might be kind of wondering, well, you just enjoy something, right? And I think the idea of this verb is to really be present. If you're doing something relaxing, you're not feeling sort of the pressure. Oh, I should be working. I should be studying. I should be doing something that's of benefit or something that helps a family member, a friend, a neighbor. But just existing, right? Doing something you enjoy and really enjoying those moments. Now, a second way the verb indulge gets used is to mean to become involved in something that is negative or undesirable. The first definition you might notice had this really positive meaning. Now the second one, not so good. And we'll look at an example of this just a little bit later. A third way the verb indulge gets used is to mean to satisfy a desire or an interest. For now, you should know indulge is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you need to drop the E on the end before you add ing. That makes indulging. The past tense and the participle forms of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D. Now, our base verb, indulge, ends with a voiced J sound. And that means that when I add the past tense ending, I'm just going to make a D sound. I'm not adding an extra syllable as I say it. So the past tense and participle forms of the verb should sound like this: indulged, indulged. Okay. There are a few phrasal verbs that we should discuss. The first is to indulge in. The first way this phrasal verb gets used is to mean to do something for one's own pleasure or enjoyment. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Once a month, she indulges in a massage. Okay. So massage where someone is maybe rubbing your back, your arms, legs, and what this sentence is suggesting is, right, she is doing this for her own pleasure or her own enjoyment. Another way indulge in gets used is to mean to eat or drink something that is not especially healthy. An example of how you might hear this used is many people indulge in a variety of sweets during this holiday season. And this is actually how this verb came up in one of the classes I was teaching last week. We were talking about how many holiday parties there are and how many different places have different sweets, and really just how much focus there is on food here in the United States in the month of December. The last phrasal verb we'll discuss is to indulge with. This means to be kind enough to allow oneself or someone else to do or to have something. An example of this might be the couple has indulged themselves with a fancy dinner on their anniversary. Right? So, again, this is kind of about maybe think of treating yourself to something, doing something nice for yourself. Now let's move on and practice using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today we're going to practice the imperative and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the imperative. The imperative in English is a little different than all of the things we study. So imperatives are really commands. Where we are telling someone by speaking or in writing to do or not to do a particular action. What makes the imperative special is that there is no stated subject. The subject is always implied. And it's either you singular if I'm talking to one person, or you plural if I'm talking to many people. So in the affirmative or a positive imperative sentence, I can just start the sentence with a verb. Now, sometimes students say, oh my goodness, that doesn't seem polite. I don't know that I can speak in that way. And so you could add the word please to the beginning of the sentence, or you could add the word please to the end of the sentence, if that makes you feel like you're being a bit more polite and that makes you more comfortable. Go ahead and do that. But let's take a look at an example sentence of indulge in the imperative. Indulge in the deliciousness of our made from scratch bakery treats. I saw a sentence very similar to this in an advertisement, right? So this business was telling us, come eat our special treats. They're going to taste incredible. We make them from scratch. So this is, I'm not using a mix. I'm not buying something from another company or bakery. We are doing the baking with our own recipes. Now let's look at an example of a negative imperative. Here, what we want to do is start with do not, or the contraction don't, and then the base verb. Again, you can add please to the beginning or please to the end, but you don't need it in both places. Let's take a look at an example of a negative imperative sentence. Don't indulge in gossip. Okay? So this sentence is going to tie back to that earlier definition, the second one, where he said kind of doing something that has a negative here, right? So gossip is where we're repeating information, usually person to person. Did you hear this person said this or did that, right? And we kind of repeat again and again. Now, the problem is gossip is not always true, and it can be very hurtful to others. It could have a negative impact on their work or their other relationships. So this might be a really good imperative for all of us, right? We should not kind of talk about other people and spread rumors. Now let's move on and talk about the present perfect progressive. You might know this as the present perfect continuous. Many books and teachers use that name, and that is perfectly okay. With the present perfect progressive, we're generally talking about actions that started in the past and they're continuing into the present. We're focusing many times on how long the action has been ongoing. And sometimes when we use the present perfect progressive, we're even suggesting that this action might continue on into the future as well. The reason I like saying present perfect progressive is that you can see 3 P's in the name of this verb tense. And I want to encourage you to remember that you're going to need 3 parts to make your verb. It's really important we pay attention to what our subject is. So if our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use have, been, the participle B-E-E-N, and then the ing form of the verb. Those are our 3 parts. Now, if the subject is he, she, or it, we use has been and then the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look at an example sentence. I've been indulging way too much this evening. I need to stop eating. Right? I feel like I hear sentences like this frequently at holiday parties and other gatherings where there's a lot of food, right? And people get kind of excited. Many times there are a lot of sweets, maybe special treats that aren't made throughout the year. So many people use this as kind of a way to enjoy, right? They're engaging in eating food that brings them pleasure. Let's talk about now making negative present perfect progressive sentences. To do this, we need to insert not after have or has, but before the participle been. What you might encounter are contractions. So you might see haven't been and then the ing form the verb, or you might see hasn't been and then the ing form the verb. Let's take a look at another example sentence. The firm has not been indulging in any challenging activities. Saw this as a criticism from a group of employees talking about, right, we find pleasure in challenging things, and none of our projects recently have been in that way. Finally, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, you start with have or has, then you have your subject, then the participle been, and then the ing form the verb. Let's take a look at our last question. Have you been indulging in any good streaming shows? Right? I feel like this is a question that is now pretty common to hear people talk about things that they're watching through various platforms, be it Netflix or Hulu, Disney Plus, etc., etc. Okay. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb indulge. The first word we're going to discuss is the noun indulgence. This can be the action or the fact of indulging, so engaging in something that brings you pleasure, or it could even be describing that thing that one indulges in. An example of this. What is your favorite holiday indulgence? Right? For some people, they might say things like holiday cookies, fudge. I know in my family, there are certain foods that were really common to eat on particular holidays. And again, they generally weren't very healthy. And so that's why it was kind of that extra special type of thing to eat. Now, another related word you might encounter is the adjective indulgent. This can mean that we are having a tendency to be overly generous to or lenient with someone. An example of this. Some parents who strive to be gentle unknowingly turn into indulgent ones or indulgent parents. So, what this sentence is really saying is there's not enough discipline. So, this sentence actually came from an article about parenting and how to kind of strike that balance, right? You don't want to be mean or unkind, but sometimes rules are really beneficial, can help us understand that there are others in this world and how we need to work together or take turns, etc. Another related word you might encounter is the adverb indulgently. So, again, this is describing something done in an overly generous or permissive way. An example of this. 1 in 4 consumers spend indulgently on streaming services. So, I saw this sentence in a recent newspaper article. Again, describing this idea of like many of us have way too many different subscriptions. We might not even be using them. And so, right, we're maybe a bit permissive, too permissive, I should say, with ourselves and with our spending. One last word for us to discuss, and it's another verb. It's overindulge. So here I've added the prefix over, right? We might be able to kind of have a literal picture in our mind as we think about that prefix. So generally it means having too much of something that is enjoyable. An example of this. Many people overindulge in the month of December. This could mean they eat too much, they drink too much, and so that leads to many people setting new goals, new resolutions for themselves in the month of January. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.